The secret room in my parents' house. Have you ever stumbled on a secret so big that it completely changed the way you saw your family? That happened to me, and it all started with a locked door in my parents' house. I grew up in what most people would call a normal family. Middle class, suburban neighborhood, white picket fence, the whole picture perfect deal. My parents, Mark and Susan, were always strict but loving. They worked hard, saved money, and prided themselves on keeping everything in the house spotless and in order. But there was one rule that was never to be broken: don't go near the storage room in the basement. They called it a storage room, but to me, it was just the locked door. From as far back as I can remember, that door was always locked tight with a heavy padlock. Anytime I asked about it, my dad would wave it off. Old stuff, junk from before you were born. Nothing you need to worry about. My mom was even stricter about it. If she ever caught me even looking at the door too long, she'd raise her voice. "Stay away from there. That's not for you." Naturally, that only made me more curious. But one night, when my parents weren't home, I decided to find out the truth. It happened when I was 17. My parents had gone out for dinner, and I was left home alone. Normally, I'd just play video games or watch TV, but that night I found myself wandering into the basement. And there it was. The locked door. Except this time, the lock wasn't fully latched. I don't know if my dad had gotten careless or if they just assumed I wouldn't dare to touch it, but the padlock was hanging loose. My heart raced as I realized this was my one chance. I hesitated: should I respect their privacy? But the curiosity burned stronger than ever. I pulled the lock off and opened the door. The smell hit me first. Musty, like something had been shut away for decades. The room was dark, but I flicked the switch and a weak yellow light flickered on. Inside were boxes, shelves, old furniture. At first, it looked like any other storage space. But then I noticed something strange. There were photos. Dozens of framed photos lined the shelves, of me. Not just me as a kid, but me sleeping. Me at school events. Me riding my bike. Even me at a friend's birthday party. Pictures I had never known were being taken. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Behind the photos, there were notebooks. I opened one, and my jaw dropped. Each page was filled with obsessive notes. She prefers her eggs scrambled. She talks to Rachel more than Emily now. She seemed sad on Tuesday after school. Every detail of my life, written down like a diary, but it wasn't mine. It was my parents'. The more I flipped through, the more disturbed I became. Some notes went as far back as when I was 3 years old. But the worst part was when I found a page with the words. "Remember, don't tell her the truth." The truth about what? I suddenly felt sick. None of this made sense. Why would my parents keep secret journals about my every move? Why hide photos of me in a locked room? And then, in the very back of the room, I found a locked metal box. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I had to. I grabbed a screwdriver and pried the lock open. Inside, there were official documents, my birth certificate, hospital records, and something that changed everything. I wasn't their biological child. My parents had adopted me when I was a baby. But that wasn't the shocking part. People get adopted all the time. The shocking part was that they had never told me. And from the notes and obsessive photos, it was clear, they weren't just raising me. They were studying me. Like I was some kind of experiment. I backed away, heart pounding. Just then, I heard the front door slam upstairs. My parents were home. I had to act fast before they found me in that room. I quickly shoved everything back into place and slipped out, locking the padlock again as quietly as possible. Then I ran upstairs and pretended to be on the couch watching TV. When my mom walked in, she gave me a long, suspicious look. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. But deep down, I knew everything was not okay. That night, I couldn't sleep. All I could think about were those photos, the journals, the secrets they'd been hiding from me my whole life. The next morning, I confronted my mom. I didn't admit I'd been in the room, I just asked directly. Am I adopted? Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, my dad shouted from the kitchen. We told you never to ask about that. And that's when I realized, they were never going to tell me the truth. Over the next few weeks, things got weird. My parents became more controlling than ever. They asked where I was going, who I was talking to, what I was doing online. Almost like they knew I'd discovered something. I started digging deeper on my own. I tracked down the hospital where I was supposedly born and requested records. That's when I found out the scariest part. I wasn't just adopted. I was part of a research program. Apparently, my biological parents had signed me into some kind of long-term psychological study at birth. My adoptive parents weren't just raising me, they were monitoring me as part of that program. That's why the notes, the photos, the secrecy. And that's when I realized. I had never really had parents. I had scientists pretending to be my family. I packed a bag and left the house that night. I never looked back. To this day, I still don't know the full story of why I was chosen or what the program was really about. My parents tried to contact me afterward, but I cut them off. I may never know who my real parents were, or why my life was turned into an experiment. But I do know one thing. Some secrets should stay locked away. Because once you open the door, nothing will ever be the same again. My boss's secret life. What would you do if you found out your boss was living a double life? I thought my job was boring, until one night, I discovered the truth that could ruin everything. I work at a medium-sized tech company, the kind of place where most people show up, do their tasks, and go home. My boss, Mr. Carter, was the definition of professional. He wore the same navy blue suit almost every day, spoke in a calm, controlled tone, and rarely joked around. He was the kind of guy who seemed predictable, maybe even boring. At least, that's what I thought. One evening, I stayed late at the office to finish a project. Everyone else had left, but when I went to shut down my computer, I noticed Mr. Carter's office light was still on. That was unusual, he was always the first to leave. Curious, I walked by to say goodnight. But what I saw through the cracked door nearly made me stop breathing. My boss wasn't alone, and he wasn't acting like the man I knew. Inside his office, Mr. Carter was speaking on the phone in a voice I had never heard before, louder, almost aggressive. He was pacing back and forth, saying things like, "The shipment must arrive tonight. No mistakes this time." Shipment? Mistakes? It sounded nothing like a normal business call. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out something that looked like a gun. I froze. My boss, the quiet, suit-wearing man I saw every day, was holding a weapon. My first instinct was to run. But instead, I backed away quietly and left the office before he noticed me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain kept spinning with questions. Who was this man really? What kind of shipment was he talking about? I decided I had to find out. So I started following him after work. The next day, I pretended to leave at 5 p.m. like usual, but instead, I waited outside the building. Sure enough, Mr. Carter left around 6:30, carrying a plain black duffel bag. Instead of heading toward his usual parking spot, he walked down the street to a different car, a black SUV with tinted windows. He got in and drove off. I grabbed my own car and followed from a distance. He drove across town, away from the office district, until he stopped in front of an old warehouse. I parked a block away and watched. Two men in dark clothes came out to greet him. They carried crates into the warehouse while Carter supervised. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was obvious this wasn't normal business. I was shaking as I wrote down the address. But the real shock came the next morning at work. When I came in, Carter was back to his usual self, calm, composed, sipping coffee at his desk like nothing had happened. He greeted me politely, even smiled. But when our eyes met, I swear his smile lingered just a little too long. Almost like he knew I'd seen something. I tried to act normal, but my heart pounded every time he walked by. By lunch, I had convinced myself I needed to tell someone. The police? HR? Maybe even the FBI. But before I could decide, Carter called me into his office. And that's when I realized, he knew. He closed the door behind me and leaned back in his chair. His calm, professional mask was gone. "You were near the warehouse last night, weren't you?" he asked softly. I felt my throat tighten. How did he know? He didn't wait for an answer. I don't like people who snoop. But you've been loyal here, hardworking. So I'll give you one chance. He leaned forward, his eyes cold. Forget what you saw. Act like it never happened. Do that, and you'll have a bright future here. Disobey me, and, well, accidents happen. I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside, I was terrified. I had to make a choice, stay silent, or risk everything by exposing him. Over the next few days, I lived in constant fear. Every knock on my door made me jump. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was Carter watching me. But then something unexpected happened. I got an anonymous email. It contained photos of Carter at the warehouse, loading crates, exchanging money. The sender wrote, "We've been watching him for a long time. We know what he is. Do you?" Attached was a badge. FBI. They wanted me to help them bring him down. I realized then, my boss wasn't just living a double life. He was running something far bigger than I ever imagined. The FBI told me Carter was part of an international smuggling ring, moving weapons, stolen goods, maybe even worse. They needed someone on the inside to gather proof. It was risky. If Carter found out I was cooperating, I'd be finished. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I agreed. Now, I go to work every day, pretending to be the same loyal employee, while secretly feeding information to the FBI. Every time Carter looks at me, I wonder if he suspects. Every handshake, every meeting feels like a test. The truth? I don't know how long I can keep up this game. But one thing is certain. Some secrets don't just ruin lives. They end them. And my boss's secret life might one day cost me mine. The family secret I was never supposed to know. Have you ever discovered a secret about your own family that made you question everything you thought you knew? I did, and once I learned the truth, there was no going back. Growing up, my family seemed pretty normal. My parents were strict but caring, and my older brother, Alex, was the golden child. Straight A's, sports star, the one everyone admired. Meanwhile, I was the average kid, the one who slipped under the radar. Still, we had family dinners every Sunday, we celebrated holidays together, and I never suspected that behind all the smiles and jokes, something much darker was hidden. It all started the summer I turned 19. I was cleaning out the attic when I found a locked wooden box buried under some old blankets. My parents weren't home, so curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a screwdriver and pried it open. Inside, I found a stack of letters, old photographs, and a birth certificate. The name on it wasn't mine. The name on the certificate was Alex's. At first, I didn't understand. Of course my brother had a birth certificate, but this one listed different parents. Not mom and dad. Two completely different names. I sat there frozen, reading it over and over. Was this some kind of mistake? Or worse, a lie? When my parents got home, I tried to act normal, but inside I was spiraling. That night, I confronted Alex. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. I showed him the certificate. His face went pale, and for a moment, he looked like he might actually faint. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "In the attic," I said. "Alex, what is this? Who are these people?" He shook his head. "You weren't supposed to find that. They didn't want you to know." "Know what?" I demanded. After a long pause, he finally said, "They're my real parents." I felt the ground shift under me. My brother, the perfect son, the pride of our family, wasn't even really my brother. But the real secret was even darker than that. Alex explained that he wasn't adopted in the usual way. Our parents hadn't gone through agencies or legal channels. They had taken him in after a tragedy. His biological parents had been close friends of my mom and dad. But one night, there was a car accident. Both of them died, leaving Alex, a toddler at the time, alone. Or at least, that's what my parents always told him. But Alex had overheard things growing up, arguments late at night, whispers that didn't make sense. He had started to suspect that maybe his parents' deaths weren't an accident. And the box I found? He had been looking for it for years, trying to confirm his suspicions. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, until I found the photograph. The next day, while my parents were out, Alex and I went back to the attic and dug deeper. Inside the box, beneath the papers, was a single photo. It showed our parents, my mom and dad, standing with his biological parents at what looked like a party. Everyone was smiling. But on the back of the photo, written in faded ink, were the words, "The night before everything changed." Alex looked at me, his eyes filled with something I'd never seen before, fear. "What if they lied to us?" he whispered. "What if they had something to do with it?" And then we realized, they were hiding more than just one secret. A week later, I overheard my parents arguing in the kitchen late at night. My mom's voice was sharp. "He's getting suspicious. You promised me this would stay buried." My dad muttered something I couldn't hear, but I caught the words "evidence" and "can't let them find out." My blood ran cold. I told Alex the next morning, and we both knew we had to make a choice, keep pretending, or dig deeper. So we dug. We searched through more boxes, old files, anything we could find. Finally, hidden inside a folder labeled Taxes 1999, we found it. Police reports. Newspaper clippings. The headline burned into my brain. "Couple dies in suspicious fire, 'cause unknown." It wasn't a car accident. It was a house fire. And the fire had been ruled suspicious. My parents had lied for years. And the worst part? I still don't know the full truth. When we confronted Mom and Dad, they denied everything. They said they lied because they wanted to protect Alex from the trauma, that he was too young to understand. But when I asked why the report said suspicious, why they had hidden the files, why they had lied about the type of accident, they had no answers. Or maybe, they just wouldn't give them. Now, every family dinner feels like a performance. Every smile from my parents feels forced. Alex and I share a silent bond, we know the truth, or at least part of it. But sometimes, I catch my parents watching us when they think we're not looking. And I can't shake the thought. Did they just take in an orphan child out of kindness? Or were they hiding something far more sinister? I may never know. But one thing is certain. Our family will never be the same again.